Hello and welcome to the special edition of the Line Drive podcast. I'm Tim Murtaugh. I am here without Sonny Joy Nelson and Hogan Gidley this week, but I am joined by a special guest who I will introduce you to in a second. But first, I'd like to ask you to like and follow this page on Rumble, the Line Drive podcast, where this is a show that we bring to you every week, and we take a look at all the news that's happening in politics in America and indeed around the world. My guest today is someone I'm very excited to have with us. He is in D.C. from the great state of Michigan. We will be talking to Tom Barrett, the Republican candidate for Michigan's 7th District, as he runs for the House of Representatives for the second time, trying to get to Washington to help President Trump, should President Trump be elected. We will talk about all of that in the next few minutes coming up, because this is the Line Drive podcast. And I want to bring in now Tom Barrett from the great state of Michigan in the 7th District. Tom Barrett, candidate for Congress. Thanks very much for joining us.
Tim, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's fantastic to have you. And I've been working with you. I should point out, for the interest of full disclosure, that I am actually assisting you with your campaign. And so
yes.
You're here in D.C. today. Tell us a little bit. Let's start this way. Why don't you give us your biography? Who is Tom Barrett and why are you running for Congress?
Yeah. Thank you. And thanks again for having me. And it's great to join you today and on your podcast, and appreciate what you're doing. I mean, this is a really important election, so we need all hands on deck, of course. But my background, to answer your question, I'm a lifelong Michigan resident, grew up in Michigan, born and raised there. I'm one of 7 kids, and saw firsthand, really growing up in that environment. My dad worked 2 jobs. My mom stayed home to raise me and my siblings. And we grew up in a great environment. Big family that comes with a lot of fun later on in life. My siblings and I are on a group text with each other. We still tease each other every day. Right, it's a
lot of fun for mom and dad when you have that many.
Yes,
right.
Yeah. So I decided to join the Army my senior year of high school. I signed my enlistment contract on Christmas break my senior year of high school. I really didn't know what I was going to do next in life after high school, and decided to join the Army. I asked my recruiter what the shortest enlistment contract I could do, and it was 2 years.
Yeah.
And I felt like at the time I thought I could do anything for 2 years, so I decided to join the Army.
So how'd that work out for you?
And it's exactly why I'm running for a 2-year term in Congress now.
But you didn't stay 2 years in the Army.
I didn't. I ended up doing 22 years. So I got on the first airplane ride of my life 18 days after I graduated high school, went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma for basic training, and then landed in South Korea on Christmas Eve of the year I graduated high school. And I was there when 9/11 happened, decided to stay in the Army beyond the 2-year enlistment contract that I had. Ended up doing a number of deployments beyond serving in Korea. I ended up in Iraq, Kuwait, and Guantanamo Bay. I was a block sergeant in Guantanamo Bay. I came home from Korea, met my wife, and then did a number of deployments in the Army, and then got selected to go to flight school and learned to fly some pretty cool helicopters. And my wife and I are raising 4 kids in Charlotte, Michigan, a small town just outside of Lansing. I got elected to the State House of Representatives in Michigan 10 years ago this year. Became the only Iraq War veteran in our State House of Representatives. Really worked heavily on veteran issues and wanted to be a leader in that, because I saw firsthand battle buddies that I had served with that really struggled when they came back home to Michigan. We had the 2nd highest veteran unemployment rate in the entire country at the time, and I wanted to try and do what I could to fix that problem, and served in the State House for 4 years, then got elected to the State Senate, was the only Iraq War vet in the State Senate for 4 years, and then ran for Congress 2 years ago, came up a little bit short against an incumbent 2 years ago, and looking forward to winning this seat this year.
I want to talk about what makes Michigan's 7th District probably the premier House race in the country in a second, but you went really quick through your 22-year career in the United States Army, where you were a helicopter pilot. I think we have some pictures here.
Okay.
If we can pull them up, and just ask you to kind of describe what we're looking at here in each one. Dylan, if you could pull up some of the picture. Here we go. So that one looks like a young fella. Who is that?
That's my basic training photo. That's about less than a week after you get off the plane. That's not even the actual uniform they issue you. That's just the one they give you for the photo.
Oh, so everybody wears the same jacket?
Yes, they switch the jacket between guys and everything. So and I was one of the only guys that smiled in my photo. My drill sergeant gave me a whole lot of crap over it, but yes, that's the photo.
There's no smiling in the Army?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the photo they send back to your mom back home, and everything. So that's my basic training mugshot from I don't know, maybe 2 days after I got off the plane in basic training.
That's great. What's next there? Okay, what's that?
That's right after I got off the flight in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. So I was about 22. I'd just been promoted to sergeant about 15 minutes before we landed in Guantanamo Bay. So they
on the plane you got promoted?
It was just before we left. So we mobilized at Fort Dixon, New Jersey. Got pinned as a sergeant there, and then I ended up being a block sergeant in Guantanamo Bay, so kind of baptism by fire. So we were, needs of the Army, as they say, prevails in all circumstances. So I got promoted, and then all of a sudden I'm in charge of a cell block with about 45 terrorist detainees in Guantanamo Bay.
I want to talk about
keep order on the cell block
too, for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So that's actually it's the only time that's also in Guantanamo Bay. This picture here.
That's in Cuba. Right there?
That's in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba.
Yep.
And it is the only time in my life that I've traveled by land, sea, and air all in the same day. So you fly down to Guantanamo Bay, then you take a barge from one side of the base to the other because it's separated by Guantanamo Bay. The airport's on one side, and most of the rest of the base is on the other side of the bay there. And then you take a bus to, ultimately where they drop you off at. So you travel by land, sea, and air all in the same day. So I think I was in training for that so I'd been promoted before we left, and then I had to go through training for, they call it primary leadership development course when you become a sergeant. So that was going through, I think, the land navigation course that we had there at that time.
Excellent. Now, that's obviously you with a helicopter.
That is,
what are we looking at?
So that is a Army reconnaissance helicopter. I flew that back home back home in Michigan when I returned home from flight school. That's actually a Vietnam-era reconnaissance helicopter that the Army still had a handful of back in Michigan. They ended up decommissioning those and upgraded to a newer helicopter that I flew a majority of my time on.
What did you fly mostly?
So I qualified on the Black Hawk in flight school, which is, of course, pretty iconic. Most people have heard of the Black Hawk, of course. Mm-hmm. Flew the Kiowa helicopter, which is the one you see in the photo here. And then most of my time was in a Lakota helicopter, which is a little smaller than a Black Hawk and a little bigger than this OH-58 Kiowa that you see in the photo there. That's the Lakota that I flew most of my hours in.
Oh, that one there.
And that one they used for a lot of homeland security purposes, a lot of reconnaissance, search and rescue, homeland security. And actually, they use it down on the southern border, or at least when we used to secure the southern border, they would use this helicopter and part of that. The gimbal on the bottom that you see, I don't know how well you can tell in the photo there, it's kind of covered by that shadow, but that is actually a pretty high-powered and pretty capable camera that one of the pilots can work the camera. The other pilot obviously is flying the aircraft, and that you can traverse back and forth and really can get a good observation of things. And can really provide a lot of valuable insight into things going on.
And then, Dylan, are there any further? Oh, there you go. There you're at the controls there.
Yeah, so that's me inside of a Black Hawk. So that's when I was in flight school at Fort Rucker in Alabama. And that is the Mike model of the UH-60 Black Hawk and has a lot of pretty advanced components within it. You can maybe tell a little bit of the features there, but that version of the Black Hawk actually has a very robust autopilot system in it, which is a pretty substantial technological achievement to put an autopilot on a helicopter and allow it to hover without somebody touching the flight.
Yeah, that seems
pretty incredible.
Not quite as a helicopter does it to me. I mean, I don't know anything about it, but it seems to me to be autopilot is something that you would more likely think of on an airplane rather than a helicopter. Yeah, so that's frightening, I think.
Yeah, and some of the autopilot systems, even on the Lakota helicopter that I flew, it only operated above a certain airspeed, so like it could keep the wings level and kind of give you directional guidance. But in this Black Hawk that you see in that photo, you could load an entire flight plan, map it out on a computer ahead of time on a laptop, load it onto a data card, load it into the cockpit, take off, activate the flight plan, and it would fly the whole thing for you.
Amazing.
Now, it won't avoid obstacles on its own because it doesn't know, if there's a tower or a mountain or whatever in front of it. So you would have to, program that in such a way, and you're there to override the controls if you need to. But it would, you could push a button, it would hover itself. So it was a pretty incredible thing.
Amazing. And then are there any more? This is your beautiful wife and family?
Yes. Yeah, that's my wife, Ashley, and our 4 kids. Patrick is in the middle. He's 11 now. Eleonora in the blue shirt next to him is 9. Gwendolyn is 7. And Lewis, our youngest, is 3. So that's a little over a year old now, that photo. But yeah, Lewis is now 3. And they're a handful. They just finished school. They're out on summer break. They've been out for a little over a week now. And we live in a small town, like I said, just outside of Lansing, raising 4 kids and really trying to do our part to do what we can to put the country back on the right track. And I feel like I have this opportunity, and I want to do my best to make sure we do it.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. This is the 7th district in Michigan, and it's Lansing is basically the peg of the whole district, and
Yes.
it's the greater Lansing area, the surrounding counties and all that stuff. But in this election, in the 2024 election, Michigan's 7th district, it's an open seat.
It is.
Because the incumbent Congresswoman is vacating the seat to run for the United States Senate as the Democrat. So it's held by a Democrat, but it's an open seat effectively for this election. And so it's a true swing district. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump won the district by 4 points in 2016. Joe Biden won it by less than 1 point in 2020. So
Yes.
it's an open swing district in a battleground state, Michigan, during a presidential year when control of not only the White House, but the House of Representatives is really up in the air because of how thin the Republicans' majority is. Mm-hmm. There could not be a bigger, this is as far as a House race goes, this is as big as they come, right? What's at stake here, and what are the issues driving it? What's going on in this race?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So this is arguably the top toss-up seat in the entire country on the congressional map. And that comes with a lot of, certainly pressure, so to speak, but also a lot of opportunity. And really, people are frustrated by what they're seeing out of Joe Biden and his complete failure in leadership. And I think they want to see changes there. They want to see new leadership in Washington. They want to elect President Trump. They want to get back to a robust economy where people could afford the cost of living. I mean, you put that photo up of my wife and my kids. I mean, we go to the grocery store every week. My 11-year-old, I feel like, is like feeding the army again.
Right.
But, our grocery bill is like got a lot of sticker shock on it. And families are seeing that across this district, and they feel it. And when I listen to folks across my district, they talk about the cost of living. They talk about security. Lansing, as you pointed out, is the central kind of geographic point in this district, and it ranks as one of the 15 most violent cities in America right now. You're also seeing runaway issues with the wide open southern border. I had the opportunity to take a tour of the southern border about a year ago. I saw border panels laying on the ground because when Joe Biden got sworn in as president of the United States, he halted in their tracks any further completion of Trump's border wall that kept people out who had no reason to enter our country. He lifted the Remain in Mexico policy. He got rid of Title 42 ability to deport people who entered illegally. He is the first president in American history to take active measures to unsecure our border. And people see that, and we've been overwhelmed as a country, and certainly overwhelmed in Michigan. Gretchen Whitmer, our governor, is giving away housing stipends to people to house people who've entered the country illegally. She's not housing anyone herself, but she is offering grants to people who will house people who've entered the country illegally.
Why couldn't she have them stay at her lake house?
Yes, she has a multitude of residences. She has the governor's mansion in Lansing. It's like 10,000 square foot residence provided by the taxpayers of Michigan. Could house a lot of people there if she chose to, and certainly doesn't. She has a residence on Mackinac Island, one of the most popular tourist destinations, not only in our state, but in this country. 7,000 square foot mansion on Mackinac Island. I've been there to do a reception when I was in the state legislature.
Wasn't she in the news for that before because her husband wanted to put the boat in the water?
Yes.
During COVID, no one else was allowed to do it, but the governor's husband.
Yes,
wanted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I may have
everybody heard about the Whitmer Lake House.
Yes, I may have had a part in exposing that for people because I was contacted by someone with firsthand knowledge of that, and I called out the governor publicly. She then denied it to my staff.
Oh, boy.
And then, of course, we later found out that it was true. And the story went national at that point, and the governor has harbored a great deal of resentment toward me since then. I wear it as a bit of a badge of honor.
That's unfortunate. Yes.
Governor Whitmer particularly seeks me out for retribution. In fact, I shared with you off camera earlier that shortly after that took place, I had a bill in the state legislature that passed unanimously in both chambers. Every Republican and every Democrat voted for it. Governor Whitmer vetoed it simply out of spite toward me because of that.
But she seems like such a nice lady. I'm kidding about that. She does not, actually.
She's a rather
but also,
spiteful person.
so she's bad on immigration because she's offering stipends for people for housing for people who have broken the law, prioritizing illegal immigrants over residents of Michigan,
or even homeless veterans.
Homeless veterans, right?
I've spoken to that. I talked to a man who came to Michigan. He was living in a homeless shelter as a veteran and struggling to kind of connect with his benefits and everything. And meanwhile, we're giving away benefits to people who've entered the country illegally, basically inviting more to come as a result of that.
Of course, that's what she's doing, inviting
So
more.
it's providing an incentive for people to conduct illegal activity and enter our country.
And the murder of the college student down in Georgia, Laken Riley, by an illegal alien, that got a lot of attention and made a lot of news in the media. But what got less attention was a similar murder of a young lady by an illegal alien in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So you don't have to be a border state, Arizona or anywhere else closer to the border. You can be in Michigan 1,500 miles from the border.
As we've been saying now for years under Joe Biden, every town in America is a border town, whether that is, by way of economic impact, whether it's by way of increased cause and concern about crime and illegal activity, whether it's the fentanyl scourge that is killing more Americans. The leading cause of death of Americans my age in the United States is fentanyl overdose that is being manufactured in China and run straight through our southern border. I was in Grand Rapids when President Trump was there to do his press conference talking about this, and there were a number of sheriffs from different communities in Michigan who were present talking about increased level of crime and the concerns about a wide open southern border that brought about. And one of the sheriffs, the most compelling thing I heard that day was that he said, we've all seen the cost of living increase under Joe Biden. The only thing that has gone down in price under Joe Biden is methamphetamine. Because we used to have these meth labs all scattered around rural communities in Michigan. They were a huge problem for our law enforcement. That's now being made in Mexico and China and piped right across our southern border. So we're not busting up meth labs like we were before. So the cost of meth, because they're building it in these labs, has now crashed in value, and the street cost of methamphetamine has plummeted in value because they're not manufacturing it the way they used to. So the only thing cheaper in Biden's America today is methamphetamine. And what does that say about the status of our country?
Well, it says a lot of things, but none of them very good, I don't think.
Not at all.
So we've talked about Biden quite a bit. We talked about Gretchen Whitmer. Let's talk a little bit about your opponent.
Sure.
Another former legislator, like yourself, from the other side of the aisle. And the Republican primary has not happened yet, or neither primary has happened yet, but you are the only two candidates filed.
Yes.
So this is the general election matchup. It's you against your opponent, Curtis Hertel Jr., former state legislator himself. And he is also bad on a lot of these issues. He supports, for example, let's go through these one at a time. Tell me, he supports sanctuary cities.
Yes.
Speaking of illegal immigration and illegal aliens, he supports the idea that local government will refuse to cooperate with federal immigration authorities. So talk a little bit about that and how that sets up quite a contrast.
Yes. So he has voiced support for sanctuary cities in Michigan. I had a bill that would have defunded programs for sanctuary cities in Michigan to coerce them into removing that status. He voted against that measure so he's basically voted to protect sanctuary communities, to continue acting like that, to refuse to cooperate with ICE. He actually called illegal immigrants law-abiding citizens. And I had to correct him that they are neither law-abiding nor are they citizens. And perhaps more insulting than that, he said that people who have entered the country illegally have a status greater than those of Americans because they've gone through a form of struggle by coming into our country. And to me, that just shows the absolute slap in the face that they have toward enforcing our immigration laws and keeping Americans safe. I remind people that government has a few core mission, obligations that government has. Protect our rights and keep us safe. At the end of the day, those are two of the foremost obligations that government has. And my opponent doesn't want to keep us safe and doesn't want to, protect our rights. When you have a wide open border, as we do, 10 million illegal border crossings under Joe Biden, eclipsing the entire population of the state of Michigan and that of, 38 or 39 other states now that we've crossed because of this, it shows just how bad they are on these issues. And we're all paying for the consequences of that now.
It's astounding to me how anybody can actually support those policies. When you see it, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. And it's nothing but a political stance that I think a lot of it stems from the knee-jerk reaction that anything that Trump supports, they must oppose. So if Trump is strong on immigration, they must be weak on it. It's really
Yeah.
And it would be a fascinating psychological study.
It is. To your point, no matter what Trump did, and he kept our country safe. Our adversaries abroad were kept in check. We didn't have war breaking out in every corner of the globe. We had a border that was under control, and we had an economy that was strong. And what have they done? They have destroyed all of that.
Yeah.
And they are seeking to continue to make Americans' lives more miserable simply because they can't support anything that President Trump put in place while he was in office.
So we talked early on here in the first few minutes of this about your long career in the United States Army, 22 years, helicopter pilot, did serve time as a, what do you call it, a block?
I was a block sergeant. Yes, we had cell blocks divided up in Guantanamo Bay.
So Curtis Hertel Jr., since we're talking about your opponent, I saw a story on foxnews.com, and I think, Dylan, we have some pictures here. So he went to, you're probably familiar with this, he went to, was this a Veterans Day event?
It was
a Veterans Day event
in our capital city in Lansing.
And Curtis Hertel Jr., I should say, did not serve in the military, but there he is at a Veterans Day event wearing an official Army issue. It's a workout uniform, but the Army considers it an official uniform.
Yes.
And so that was not his. It was given that by someone.
Yeah.
And there he is on stage with other veterans who are in uniform appropriately, and he is there wearing what the Army considers to be an official U.S. Army uniform that he did not earn. So he caught a little hell for this. Why is it that, and you are an Army veteran, 22 years, as we've covered this, why is doing something like that, why should you not?
Yeah.
Why should you not?
It's just so insulting. I mean, here you are on Veterans Day. I think that most people reasonably believe that if you're wearing something branded with a military branch of service on Veterans Day, whether it's a civilian attire, a baseball cap, anything like that, you're kind of giving the signal that you're a veteran on Veterans Day. Right?
If you see a guy on stage on Veterans Day wearing an Army jacket and he's there because he's a former legislator, right?
Right.
To me, that says, he must have served in the Army.
Absolutely. And I think unambiguously, if you wear an Army-issued uniform on Veterans Day, you aren't just implying you're a veteran, you're clearly suggesting that you are, and that crosses a line. This is the same uniform that I was issued when I was serving in the Army, and countless others of my brothers and sisters that I served with and my battle buddies were issued this exact uniform. It's an iconic Army uniform from the War on Terror era, specifically the Iraq War period of service that so many people fought and tragically too many people did not come home from. And to see someone using it for political gain on Veterans Day of all days is really a slap in the face to those of us that did serve and earn that uniform. You know, somebody to go prancing around in another man's uniform on Veterans Day, I think is a character flaw that we ought to recognize. A number of veterans, dozens literally of veterans in this district, rightfully called him out for that, signed an open letter.
Sent him a letter, right.
Calling him out for stolen valor because they've said, listen, military uniforms are for those that served in the military. They're not to be used for political gain. They're not to be used in political, advertisement and things of that sort. If you are biographically someone who served in the military, certainly you can illustrate that and highlight that as a function of your biography. But to be going out on stage, he wasn't even in the program to speak at this event, but somehow finagled his way on stage, goes up to the microphone to speak, wearing some other man's uniform on Veterans Day, I think is an insult to veterans who served and earned their uniform.
And according to the reporting on that, during the course of his remarks, he did not say, I did not serve.
No, absolutely not. He never, ever indicated. I was at that same event. We were doing a wreath-laying ceremony, rededicating a veterans monument on our state capitol lawn in Lansing that day. And that was the event that we were at. And he shows up wearing that uniform. And it really, it really unsettled me to see that happening.
Yeah.
And, I get that maybe I have a different perspective on this, having committed my adult life to service in the Army.
I would say that you do have a different perspective on it.
I called a number of veteran buddies of mine and I said, hey, what do you think about this? And they universally, every single veteran that I spoke to, and I didn't even give them, the biased perspective of this being my political opponent. I said, hey, if somebody wears something military themed on Veterans Day, do you assume they're a veteran? Yes, absolutely. Do you think if someone wears an Army issued uniform on Veterans Day, that clearly gives the message that they're a veteran? Without a doubt. Someone wearing this Army issued physical fitness uniform that is covered in the Army regulation clearly implies that they're a veteran, especially on Veterans Day of all days to be doing that. And I think it shows a complete lack of awareness of what he should and shouldn't be doing, and the conduct that is unbecoming of somebody seeking office like this.
Yeah, I would say. And so did he reply when those veterans sent him a letter saying, you shouldn't have done this?
He tried to suggest that he was granting a benefit, or certainly recognizing or honoring veterans by wearing it that day. And I feel strongly that there are a lot of ways to recognize veterans for their service. You can volunteer, you can help clean a cemetery, you can go distribute meals at to veterans that are homebound. You can. We have 2 homes for veterans in Michigan where a lot of veterans aren't really physically capable of leaving and doing a whole lot. You could go volunteer and spend time with them, listen to their service background, hear about their contributions to America. There are countless things you can do for veterans that don't involve wearing another man's uniform on Veterans Day.
So he's bad on sanctuary cities, has spoken in support of sanctuary cities. He's bad, obviously, on wearing another man's uniform. I love the way you put that. That wearing another man's uniform on Veterans Day when he himself did not serve. And he's also bad on taxes, right? Mm-hmm. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, he fully embraced Governor Whitmer's 45-cent gas tax increase that she was promoting when she became governor of Michigan. He fully embraced that. In fact, he introduced Governor Whitmer's version of the state budget that would have accounted for that, and then gave his support for that. Thankfully, Republicans were in majority at the time, and that bill didn't advance to increase the gas tax by 45 cents in Michigan. But, if Curtis Hertel had his way in Michigan right now, gas would be 45 cents more than it already is, which, we've crept closer and closer to that $4 a gallon threshold that, certainly puts a huge, impact on people's pocketbooks and their ability. In Michigan, we have a tradition of people traveling over the summer. Many folks go up north. They have a cottage there, a vacation destination that they like to go to. When gas is $4 a gallon, it certainly has an impact on their ability to go out and stimulate the economy in other ways. So these are things that he's been bad on. He's been certainly one that favors regulation of the economy, environmental pushes. All of that type of stuff that he's promoted has really been something that Michiganders would have a far worse off cost of living if my opponent had his way with their pocketbook.
So if he gets to Washington, he can be expected to just toe the line for the left and do everything that.
Absolutely. In fact, when he left office in the state Senate, he immediately went to work like the next day as Governor Whitmer's chief lobbyist and legislative director, where they have systematically dismantled any incremental gains by Republicans in public policy over the last 4 decades.
Yeah.
They have done everything they can in just the last year and a half to undo all of that.
So in order to ensure that does not happen, I think we can call up your website here. How can people get involved?
Yeah, so this was one of the most expensive congressional races in America 2 years ago. It was almost $40 million in total spending. We're going to need all the help we can get within my district, but across America to win this seat. It's going to be all hands on deck to do that. People can go to my website, tombarrettforcongress.com. It has my platform on there, has my background on there, has a donate link for people to come and donate any amount that they can to help us win this seat. As I said, this is ranked as the top toss-up open seat in America. It's a must-win for us, but it's going to require help from across the country to be able to do that.
It certainly will. But before we wrap up, I want to go back. You mentioned we talked before about how you served for a year at Guantanamo Bay.
I did, yeah, 2004.
Right in there with the terrorists on the other side of the bars. And there's been news now, speaking of our open borders and all that stuff, 6 Russian nationals have been apprehended, and they are known to have ties with ISIS, the obvious notorious Islamic terrorist organization. And these are exactly the types of folks that you stared eyeball to eyeball with when you were on duty at Guantanamo Bay. So who are these types of people that we're dealing with, and what dangers do 6 guys like that roaming around the interior of America, what kind of threat do they pose? People just like that. Right?
Yeah, this terrorist ideology is the exact same ideology that Al-Qaeda and the Taliban and these other detainees that I happened to serve, toe-to-toe against when I was in Guantanamo Bay. We should take them at their word, which is they want to destroy America, they want to destroy our allies, and they're going to stop at nothing to do that. And I think we have to take them at their word. It goes back to the whole sanctuary city argument. If we have a wide open border in sanctuary cities, it allows terrorists like these to roam our country, assemble their plans, and carry out devastating attacks on America, just like we saw in 9/11. And God knows what else they have planned far worse than that, should we let them go about what they're planning to do. It really reinforces just how critical a secure border, getting rid of sanctuary cities, and doing the things we need to do that President Trump did to keep Americans safe. And we need to reinstate those policies. We need to reelect President Trump and get this over the finish line. We need to win seats like this in the United States Congress to give President Trump the license he needs to secure our border and get American, law and order under control to keep Americans safe.
Seems like a good place to leave it. Thank you very much, Tom Barrett, the Republican candidate for the 7th District of Michigan.
Thank you for having me.
United States Congress. TomBarrettForCongress.com, right?
Yes.
If we can see that one last time, Dylan, I would appreciate it. There you go. TomBarrettForCongress.com. This is a must-have congressional race. It's going to be the difference between the parties right now. Of course, it's historically thin. The Republican majority is historically thin. And in a presidential year, this is absolutely a seat that the Republicans have to have, and God willing, you're elected, and Donald Trump is elected also. So thank you for joining us here. Thanks for being in D.C. and joining us here.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm Tim Murtaugh. Again, Sonny and Hogan not with us today, but this has been the Line Drive Podcast.